Hello and welcome to another edition of Ambient Talkie, a show where we dive into some weird and wacky equipment and wonderful, call it whatever you want music. I'm Andy from Two Round Robins, and I hope you're ready for some words about the creation of my latest release. So, for the past few weeks and months, I've been working on a new release from my ambient electronic musical project called Two Round Robins. I try to create a selection of tracks for each season, although my full-time job and a lot of life stuff likes to get in the way of that. For this springtime release, I've been working on a more brighter and calmer sounding album that was in a large part inspired by a space or environment. So let's talk a bit about that. Hey, it's me, Outside Andy, and I do have a face, so that's a new one for the YouTube channel. The reason why we're here is that this is the place that kind of inspired the whole release. I tend to find places and environments very inspirational for whatever I put into my music, especially if it's ambiental, textural, etc., etc. A little backstory for you guys. A couple of months ago, me and Maggie, who's holding the camera now, got ourselves a little dog, and we tended to, as dog owners do, tend to, take her out for the daily walk, the daily dog walk. And we're privileged enough to live in a vicinity of a very beautiful park that has a lot of these hidden pathways, meaning that, each time we take the dog out, we kind of explored a bit, try to see what different walkabouts and everything are there, and we tended to follow those along quite, nicely. One of these pathways is called the Senkova pot. I think it's to do something with the botanic scientist or some sort, so I really got to check out the background, but that's that when regard to that. And the other part, even though it's very beautiful, the main part that kind of inspired this whole shtick was basically this. I'm a headphone man myself, meaning wherever I go, I take this and I put them in, and it's, I kill the environmental sound, meaning I listen to music, podcasts, and all that mumbo jumbo. But thing is, having a very, very small dog, you tend to be very, very attentive, meaning that you kind of have to really worry about so she doesn't eat shit or run off for any deer or anything like that. So this is very embarrassing for me to say, but putting the headphones off kind of changed the whole perspective. It's very millennial of me to say that, and it's very, very embarrassing, like I said. But it kind of refreshed the way how we listen to environment, especially when it comes to beautiful birdsong or streams, creeks, distant traffic, crackles in the rusty leaves and all that. So I think in that way, it kind of really helped me understand the space and the environment far better than just visually exploring it with my eyes. So I think this thing kind of went into my subconscious. It kind of made its way around there. And then going back home, making music, the subconscious tended to transform into a more creative process. So I do hope you're gonna enjoy the release. I'm gonna give the word back to Inside Andy before people envelop us here. So have a great one. So on my previous release, I was mostly focused on using MLRE script on norns. And with this, I really wanted to break out of this minimalistic use of gear. I think changing the creative strategy for each release is a really easy and fun way to kind of jump outside your comfort box. I always see making a more textural, soundscape, sonic art type release to be a study in essence, an exploration of what can be done in that time with the predisposed plan and the use of certain gear. And since we're talking about gear, let's talk about what gear I have used. Well, the plan was rather simple. Explore Coco Quantus and Plum Butter with an electric guitar, and have that guitar tuned to FA-CGCE tuning, which for me just sounds way brighter and far more springtimey, if that makes any sense. Next, use norns mostly for generative synthesis, apart from one or two songs that used more time-mangling scripts. Next, explore organelle, a recently purchased Criterion Guitarist organelle M, to see how it compares to norns, being another open source community driven musical computer, but sadly I really haven't had that much time to fully explore it, but I still wanted to use it on the record. Apart from Critter and Guitarist organelle, I also used OP1, as I tend to use it on most projects either way. And all the tracks must be performed live. This was a rule that I have set because I'm trying to transition into a more live setting, or at least try to see if I can incorporate gear into a live music event. So meaning that I'm, kind of hoping to do live gigs in the future. So this was a great way to just see how that is possible. And last but not least, use of field recordings. I used my trusty H4n and my dictaphone to record some sounds in the before mentioned park. So yeah, this was my plan, or the use of gear that was planned within making this record. And now let's take a closer look to how it sounds and how I used post-processing to the recorded signals. But for this, we'll have to move to a computer, so here we go. Let's take a look what I did here. So the main thing about the release is that the main sound source, or the main thing that really kind of pushed its way into my sonic field, was basically the use of these ciat-lonbarde instruments here. So the Plum Butter and Coco Quantus. And like I said before, Coco Quantus had its fair share of guitar plugged in, meaning if we take a little listen here, we can basically hear quite a lot of guitar in the buffers. And the thing is, it wasn't just the guitars in the buffers, but it was also, Coco Quantus was also used as let's say, a weird-ass amplifier for a guitar that was played live while machines were doing their stuff. So you can basically hear. So as you can hear, this little chord here, or this little arpeggiated chord here, was played live. Now, of course, I used Coco Quantus and its lovely noise quite a lot, and I used Plum Butter. A lot of times I would interconnect Coco Quantus and Plum Butter, but I guess for this patch here, I mostly used Plum Butter as deer horn sound. And now come to think of it, I think a lot of it has to do that I patched the oranges out of Coco Quantus into the inputs of deer horn, thus creating this lovely tremolo effect that you hear here. Okay, so that works quite a lot, and as you can see, whenever I press the pause, there's a lot of this supermassive Valhalla reverb, which again is one of my favorites free to use reverbs out there. It just sounds supermassive. So that's a good thing. Anyways, what else did I do on the side when it comes to post-processing these two signals? It's fairly simple. I used a bit of EQing. I used a bit of smoothing out the frequency spectrum here and there, and of course I used compression. And let's say I love to use these Kush audio plugins just because they sound fairly warm, and it's especially great combination with analog gear such as Plum Butter or Coco. And of course, a lot of it has to do with just using Valhalla Supermassive. But I tended not to shimmer out the hell out of everything like I did in the beginning. And I tended to use the natural sound of Coco Quantus and Plum Butter quite a lot. Okay, moving on, we have an OP1 here. So what did I use on the OP1 in this patch? So what this is basically an electric guitar that was sampled into OP1, and I think I used an EBow and a tremolo pedal, and then kinda sampled a note into OP1, and then used this to play it chromatically. And I think it adds, like, it's a lovely sound, especially when you add the reverb on it. Of course, a lot of it has to do, as you can see, this is just the digital noise that that OP1 has, that you really kind of need to take care of each time when you record, since it tends to be quite annoying at times, especially if you're doing some other stuff in that frequency spectrum. Okay, moving on, we have the organelle here. Now, what I used on the organelle, I think I used the DJ sample patch, and basically it's just some bells. It's a recording of a bell with two playheads moving simultaneously. We have our trusty norns here. I used a very basic sequence that I did on Flora. And it sounds something like this. It's very plucky, it's percussive, it kind of adds rhythm or some sort of, I don't know, some sort of necessity or some sort of movement within these other instruments that, you know, are far more drony and evolving. And a nice thing about this is, and this wasn't really intentional, but let's say if we listen to organelle and norns at the same time, so here it comes. You know, it's not perfectly synced, and I didn't try to sync it whatsoever. I just, you know, it just kind of happened because I tend to do stuff asynchronous most of the times, and it kind of synced up just in the right way. And I tend to take, you know, to say this is luck. And it surely is, and I think it sounds warm. But this is what ambient music is. It's just, you know, you get lucky, and you know, machines tend to work in a certain way that you know, they just complement each other so nicely without being synced. It sounds syncable, so that's a good thing. Okay, so what was the main idea behind this track? Is fairly simple. As you can see here. Let's see this. You see this thing? So like this little transients that kind of go like this. Well, the idea was that you start somewhere and then you basically try to use the evolving tones within instruments. So it's like a little call and response from one instrument to the other. So let's say for this one, I tried to start with the guitar. So just a simple chord here, followed up by a response from OP1, which again was responded by the guitar here, and then the guitar was responded by the deer horn that played here. So this sounds something like this. That's a chord, so we're just listening. And now the OP1 makes its appearance. Chord number 2 played on the guitar and responded by the deer horn here. So this was basically the idea. It's kind of like going up and down while this is doing its stuff. Organelle and norns are, you know, kind of working together, doing their own thing down there, but still trying to complement the trio here that's going on. So, you know, in a way, I think that really has to do a lot with how we are in the moment when creating, you know, electronic, textural, sonic art type things. It's just like you tend to put some machines together to do their own stuff while the other ones are either complementary or just go way berserk in the other direction. Yeah, so this was how it was done processing. Not a lot, to be honest. It was just mostly frequency stuff, compression, and, you know, a moderate to a good use of reverb, let's say. A reverb that's okay. That's fine to be used in such a way. So yeah, there you have it. This was a presentation of the creative process that went into the album for Flora, Fauna, and You. You can get the whole thing on Bandcamp for a small price if you wish to support me directly. If you download the album, you also get a nice PDF with some liner notes that might give you a clue how things were done additionally. And I do hope y'all will enjoy listening to the release as much as I have been enjoying making it. And for those fans that joined me on the YouTube premiere, if you go into chat, I'm gonna link a couple of Bandcamp codes so you can get the release free of charge. Just as a little treat to show you folks my utmost gratitude. As always, like if you like, dislike if you don't, and thumb if you haven't done so already. Have a lovely rest of the evening, morning, afternoon, whenever you might be watching, and I do hope to see you next time. Take care.